AITA for making my ex regret leaving me by setting strict boundaries? At first, everything was quite simple, almost ordinary. We met through mutual friends. We hit it off very quickly, and in just a few months, we were already dating seriously. Haley was sweet, caring, and above all, very clear about what she expected from a relationship. From the very first weeks, she talked about stability, about building something long-term, a solid future. And for me, at that time in my life, that resonated too. I was ready for it. So, we moved forward without much hesitation, as if it were obvious. After 1 year of dating, we decided to move in together. It was not an impulsive decision. We had discussed it, weighed the pros and cons, and organized things. We looked for a place that we both liked, and even though the apartment was put in my name in the suburbs outside Atlanta, in our minds, it was our home. I paid the rent, the bills, the groceries, and most of the daily expenses. Haley worked too, but her income was unstable. So, almost naturally, I took on that role, and it never bothered me. On the contrary, I saw it as something normal when you are a couple. For me, it was not a sacrifice, it was an investment in what I believed we were building together. Our routine was simple, quiet. During the week, we worked, then in the evening, we had dinner together. Afterward, we would watch a streaming show or just talk about our days without pressure, without pretense. On the weekend, we went out to eat at local restaurants, saw friends, or planned little road trips, short getaways, and we often talked about the future, big trips, a larger apartment, the idea of getting married one day, having kids. Nothing was set on a calendar, but everything seemed to be heading in that direction, as if we were moving along the same road. That is why what happened next hit me full force. I remember the moment perfectly because everything was too calm. There had been no yelling, no argument right before, no obvious tension, no clear signal, at least none that I was able to see. It was an ordinary evening. I came home from work a little tired as usual, driving my car through the usual Atlanta traffic, and I found her sitting in the living room. She was quiet, too quiet. She told me we needed to talk. That kind of phrase instantly knots your stomach. It puts pressure in the air, but despite that, I did not imagine for a second what was going to follow. I told myself it was maybe work-related, a personal issue, or even a difficulty between us that we could solve by talking. She sat across from me, and after a few seconds of silence, she said word for word, "I think it is better if we stay friends." Then she added, "I really appreciate you and I do not want to lose you, but I think as a couple, it is not working." At first, I did not even react. I felt like someone had muted the whole world, as if everything suddenly went deaf. I asked her to explain, to tell me what was really going on. I did not raise my voice. I did not interrupt her. I was not trying to win a battle. I just wanted to understand. She sighed and told me she felt trapped in monotony, that the routine was emotionally draining her. She said she did not feel the same way anymore, that it was not fair to continue like this, and that rather than letting things get worse, she preferred to stop. That sentence hurt me more than I could properly explain. Not just because she admitted things might have been heading towards something unfair, but because she said it as if it were close, as if it were almost inevitable. Despite that, I tried to stay calm. I told her it hurt me, but that I appreciated her honesty and that I preferred an uncomfortable truth over a lasting lie. I did not beg her. I did not ask her to stay. I did not try to convince her. Part of me was in shock, but another part thought that if she really did not want me anymore, the most dignified thing to do was to let her go. Except there was one detail that did not add up. While we were talking, I noticed a suitcase near the door. Not a small bag, not something thrown together at the last minute. A large suitcase, clearly ready, clearly packed. That struck me because until that moment, I believed this discussion was spontaneous. A recent decision, made on an emotional impulse. I asked her why there was a suitcase. She hesitated for barely a second, then finally said she had thought about all this in advance, that she needed space, and that she was going away for a few days. I stood up, and without saying a word, I opened an outside pocket of the suitcase, and there, I saw plane tickets. It was at that precise moment that my confusion turned into something different, a strange, almost cold sensation. I asked her where she was going. I asked her since when this was planned. I asked her why she had not told me anything beforehand. She looked at me with an expression I did not recognize, a hard, almost foreign expression. And she answered, "That is none of your business." Now, we are just friends. That sentence slapped me in the face like a sharp blow. Friends. That word said like that after 2 years of living together, after our plans, our habits, our shared daily life. It was completely absurd. I did not argue. I did not insult her. I did not try to make a scene. I just nodded. She took her suitcase, walked to the door. Just before stepping out, she specified that she was leaving a lot of her things here, but that she would come by to pick them up later. Then she left. I found myself alone in the apartment, surrounded by objects that until that day were part of us. Her clothes in the closet, her products in the bathroom, photos, tiny details that seemed to scream that this story had not ended naturally but abruptly, like a clean cut. That night, I did not sleep. I did not even cry right away. I sat in the living room, replaying every conversation from the last few months in my head, looking for clues I had not seen, words I had perhaps ignored. I wondered if I had been blind or if I had simply trusted too much. What gnawed at me the most was not just that she was leaving me. It was this feeling that I had been the last to know. Everything seemed calculated, the conversation, the suitcase, the tickets, her way of leaving without looking back. Despite that, I forced myself to stay rational. I told myself she might need time, that there were things I did not understand yet. I repeated to myself that I had to act like an adult, like someone who accepts a breakup without turning it into a war. I did not know yet that taking this decision literally, her offer to stay friends, was going to turn the whole dynamic between us upside down and eventually make her regret ever saying those words. But that came later. The following days were strange. No messages, no calls, no further explanation. Haley had just disappeared. I tried to continue my routine, drive to work in my car, come home to the apartment, cook something simple, but the silence weighed like a wall. Yet, I did not feel panic. It was more of a weird combination of disappointment and delayed clarity. And it was on social media that everything started to align. The second day after she left, I saw her first post, a photo at the beach, the ocean behind her, a big smile, and clothes I recognized. The next day, more photos, breakfast facing the ocean, sunset walks, tropical cocktails. She was not clearly showing herself with someone, but she was not alone either, not really. And above all, the message was crystal clear. She was not reflecting. She was not taking time. She was on vacation. At that moment, I understood what the plane tickets were for, and I did not feel jealousy. I felt something else, like an emotional disconnection, a thread being cut. While I was trying to digest the end of a 2-year relationship, she was celebrating her freedom, and this realization, instead of crushing me, pushed me to make a decision. I decided to take her at her word. If she said we were now friends, then I would treat her like a friend. Without privileges, without special access, without the consideration reserved for a partner. A friend does not come into your home whenever they want. A friend does not have the keys to your private space. A friend does not let their personal belongings invade your life indefinitely, as if nothing had changed. That very day, I called a locksmith and changed the locks on the apartment. I did not do it out of revenge or on a fit of anger. I did it because it was logical. None of my friends have access to my home, and I saw no reason for her to continue having it after ending the relationship and leaving without a clear explanation. Next, I gathered all her things. It was neither quick nor easy. There were clothes, books, documents, memories, lots of little things you accumulate without realizing it. I put them in boxes carefully, without damaging anything. I did not throw anything away. I did not hide anything. I simply placed them near the door, packed, ready to be picked up, as she had said. Her trip lasted about 5 days. During all that time, she did not try to contact me. Neither did I. I just silently observed her posts as if nothing had happened. Mutual friends reacted, commented with support, threw in inside jokes, messages of complicity. That caught my attention, but I did not yet understand the real scope of what was going on. On Monday morning, when I already knew she was back in town, I received her call. I answered normally. "Hi, Brandon," she said, as if everything was intact. Then she continued, "Can you bring me some documents I left in my drawer and my laptop, please? I am at work." Her tone was not that of someone asking. It was the tone of habit, as if I were automatically still part of her daily logistics. I breathed in slowly before answering. "Come get them," I said. "I am busy." There was a short silence on the other end of the line. Then she let out an "okay," that sounded more annoyed than surprised, and we hung up. Half an hour later, I heard movement at the door, familiar footsteps, the very recognizable sound of a key trying to go in. Once, then again, the expected click that never came. I walked over and opened the door. Haley was there, looking upset, her bag and phone in hand. As soon as she saw me, she blurted out, "What is going on? Why can't I open it? Did you change the lock?" "Yes," I answered calmly. "No friend has access to my apartment." Her face changed instantly. She went from irritation to disbelief. "That is not necessary," she said. "You could have warned me." "We broke up," I replied. "You left. You said we were friends now. This is consistent with that." I stepped inside and pointed to the boxes near the door. "Well, here is all your stuff. I hope you can take it all right now because it is starting to get in the way." That phrase, "getting in the way," hit her right in the chest. I saw it in her expression, in the way she clenched her jaw before answering. She did not yell, but her voice was clearly irritated. She said she did not expect this, that I was exaggerating, that I did not need to be so cold. I did not argue. I did not raise my voice. I simply stood firm. She reluctantly took her things. She took longer than necessary, as if she was waiting for me to change my mind or say something else. I did not. When she finished, she left without saying goodbye. I closed the door and felt something I had not felt in days, relief. And a few hours later, I started to understand the context. The real one. Haley and I had been part of the same group of friends since long before the breakup. People we went out with, celebrated birthdays with, organized parties with. What I did not know was that they already knew. I figured it out through ambiguous messages, awkward comments, silences that were too long, too loaded. Gradually, it became obvious the breakup had not been a surprise to everyone. Haley had talked to them about it beforehand. She had shared her doubts, her plans, even her trip. And I had been the last to know. This revelation hit me harder than the breakup itself. Not because they owed me blind loyalty, but because I realized that while I was thinking about us, she was already organizing her life without me with an audience. I had absolutely no time to prepare emotionally. They did. That same afternoon, the group decided to go ahead with a long-planned party. It was not canceled, it was not postponed, the evening just took place, and I was invited. I accepted without really knowing why. Maybe out of habit, maybe out of curiosity, maybe because I needed to see with my own eyes how things were going to unfold now that the dynamic had changed. I did not know yet that this night would mark a true, definitive breaking point, not only in my relationship with Haley, but in the way she was going to start seeing the real consequences of her "let's stay friends." I went to the party without any specific expectations. I was not going to provoke or confront anyone. I just felt that after everything that had just happened, I needed to see for myself the state of affairs in this environment that, until recently, I thought was familiar. I wanted to know if I was the one overreacting or if I had actually been living in a different version of reality. I arrived early. I greeted several people, exchanged pleasantries, normal comments, nothing special. Some looked at me cautiously, others had an obvious awkwardness, hard to hide. You could feel that many knew more than they were saying. I remained polite but distant. A little later, Haley arrived. She was not alone. She walked in with a guy I did not know. She looked relaxed, almost joyful. She introduced him casually, Logan. No explanation, as if it were unnecessary, as if the situation spoke for itself. He seemed uncomfortable right from the start, as if he did not quite know what kind of territory he had just stepped into. But he stayed by her side. For most of the evening, they did not leave each other's side. They did not kiss in front of everyone. No, but their closeness was glaring. They whispered in each other's ears, laughed, and exchanged long looks, too heavy to be innocent. It was clear there was something going on, even if it was not officially stated. I watched this with a mix of indifference and confirmation. If I had had the slightest doubt that the breakup was really about monotony, that night, it evaporated. And the strangest thing is that while this was unfolding on that side, something unexpected started happening elsewhere. Kelsey, a close friend of Haley's, started behaving differently with me. We had never been particularly close. She was always nice, yes, but rather distant, like someone who knows her place. That night, however, she came to greet me with unusual enthusiasm. We started talking about simple things, work, group anecdotes, memories we all shared. The conversation flowed naturally, effortlessly. And as time passed, I noticed she stayed close to me. Too close compared to our usual dynamic. She laughed easily. She touched my arm while talking. She sought my gaze, holding it longer. I did not immediately interpret this as something with an ulterior motive. I told myself she was maybe trying to be more empathetic with me after what had happened. The evening went on like that. Haley glued to Logan, me in conversation with Kelsey. And I did not do anything deliberately to attract attention. I was not playing a role. I was just being me, unfiltered, without that constant weight of having to protect someone else's emotional comfort. Then came the most tense moment of the night. Kelsey and I were chatting in a corner. We were laughing at an unimportant remark. She was close, yes, but there was nothing inappropriate. And suddenly, I felt a presence behind me. Even before I could turn around, I heard Haley's voice. "Brandon, what are you doing?" Her tone was full of irony, disguised venom. "You two are super close?" "No." The atmosphere changed instantly. Around us, several discussions stopped at once. Some people turned their heads discreetly, as if drawn to an accident. Kelsey froze, visibly uncomfortable. And right then, something tightened inside me. It was not thought out, not calculated. It was automatic. I put my arm around Kelsey and pulled her close to me firmly. Not aggressively, but clearly, without ambiguity. Then, I looked Haley straight in the eyes and said, "And how does that concern you?" A heavy silence fell over us. Someone made that little noise you hear when someone has just said something too true, too sharp. That collective murmur that does not need words to exist. Haley stood motionless for a second, as if she did not expect this answer. Then she frowned and fired back. "Does it not bother you that I brought someone else to the party?" I looked at her without getting angry, without raising my voice. "No," I answered. "It does not bother me. After all, we are just friends. Do whatever you want." My words hit her like a slap. Not just her, but Logan too. He was watching the scene a few steps away, and his discomfort became obvious. He avoided my gaze, looked at Haley, then at the people around, as if looking for an exit. He did not say anything. He just excused himself and left. Haley followed him almost immediately, visibly furious. They walked out without saying goodbye. It took several minutes for the atmosphere to return to something normal, but nothing was really the same afterward. I let go of Kelsey. She looked at me with a mix of surprise and nervousness. She said nothing. We kept talking, but the tone had changed, as if the air itself had a different texture. Despite everything, we stayed together until the end of the party. When I left, I felt a strange tranquility, not satisfaction, not a feeling of victory, just the certainty that I had acted exactly according to the rule that had been imposed on me. If we were friends, then I had nothing to explain, nothing to justify. The evening ended there. The next morning, looking at my phone, I found more than 20 messages from Haley. They had arrived during the night or very early in the morning. Not a single one was an apology. Not a single one was a real question. It was purely reproaches. "How dare you treat me like that in front of everyone? What you did was disrespectful. What is going on with you and Kelsey? She is my friend. Stay away from her. You guys probably already had something going on before we broke up." I read everything carefully and replied to none of it. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I understood something simple and essential. The slightest response would have fueled a conversation that no longer belonged to me. She had decided to redefine our relationship without really asking my opinion. I had simply accepted this new definition and acted accordingly. I turned off my phone and went about my day. For the first time since the breakup, I did not feel any guilt. I felt consistency, and even if this consistency made her uncomfortable, it had become necessary for me. 2 days later, Kelsey called me crying. It was not a quiet, discreet sob. It was uncontrollable, desperate crying, the kind that catches your breath and stops you from speaking. It took her several minutes to calm down enough to explain. Haley had started writing to her. Initially, I thought of awkward messages, the kind of stuff that happens after a bitter breakup, jabs, jealousy, indirect reproaches. But no, what Kelsey showed me was nothing ordinary. It was not simple tension between friends. They were direct, aggressive, and frankly disturbing threats. Things like if she got close to me again, she would have to deal with the consequences. She accused her of being an opportunist and warned her to watch her back, even implying she knew people who could make things difficult. Reading this, I felt a mix of anger and worry. These were not words dropped in a moment of fleeting rage. There was an intention to intimidate, to genuinely cause fear. Qley told me she had tried to ignore the first messages, but the last one convinced her that this was no longer something she could take lightly. She was afraid for herself and also for me. She felt that Haley was losing control. Without thinking too much, I went to Qley's place. When I arrived, she was visibly distraught. Her eyes were swollen from crying and her hands were shaking. She showed me everything calmly, the messages, the sent times, and even screenshots she had saved in case she needed them later. There was no possible doubt about what was happening. We sat down and talked for hours. We tried to analyze the situation as rationally as possible. Neither of us wanted to escalate things. Neither was looking for drama. But it was obvious we could not just wait for Haley to calm down on her own. That is when we made a difficult but necessary decision to file a police report. We went together to file the complaint at the local station. The process was neither simple nor fast. We had to explain the context, show the evidence, repeat awkward details, go over things we would have preferred to forget. But we agreed on one point. It was the right thing to do. Not for revenge, for protection. When we walked out of there, Qley asked me for something I did not expect. She asked me to stay with her that night. She did not do it with any hidden intentions. She asked me because she was scared. She did not feel safe alone in her home. I accepted without hesitation. That night, we tried to distract ourselves. We made something to eat. We put on light movies, the kind that do not require much attention, just to make noise and give ourselves the illusion of normality. Little by little, the tension dropped. We started laughing at simple things, talking about our lives outside of all this chaos. And at one point, sitting on the couch, the atmosphere changed. Not abruptly, not in a forced way. Something silent. A gaze that lasted a little too long. A gesture of closeness that lasted a second longer than usual. Without needing to say it, we drew closer. The moment happened without a plan, without preparation. It was intense, loaded with everything we were holding back. The stress, the confusion, and this almost urgent need to hold on to something secure. At that moment, there was no guilt, just two people seeking comfort in each other. One thing led to another. I will not go into details because they are not necessary. I will only say that it was consensual, emotionally confusing, but real. It was not a stupid, reckless decision. It was the consequence of everything we had just lived through. The next morning, I woke up with a strange feeling, a mix of calm and alertness. And it did not take long to understand why this alert existed. We heard loud, aggressive pounding on the door, not normal knocks, but insistent banging, accompanied by screaming. I recognized the voice immediately. It was Haley. She was screaming Qley's name. She was saying incoherent things. She was demanding that we open up. Qley started shaking. She closed her bedroom door and looked at me in panic. We did not hesitate. We called the police. Haley was still screaming when the officers arrived. She was out of control, and after the intervention, after the statements, a piece of information came out and changed everything. Haley had placed an AirTag in my car. That is how she knew exactly where I was. Not by chance, not because she had guessed. She had tracked me. And that, added to the threats and another detail Qley mentioned, the fact that she had found that morning offensive graffiti on the door of her apartment, finished building the case. Haley was removed from the premises. Later, a restraining order was issued in Qley's favor, and on top of that, Haley received a heavy fine for the damage and harassment. When it was all over and the house fell back into silence, I sat down to think. For a long time, I had believed the problem was the breakup, that the pain came from the fact that a 2-year relationship had ended. But I realized that was not it. The real problem was not setting boundaries from the start, confusing understanding with permissiveness. Haley wanted to redefine our relationship on terms that only benefited her. She wanted freedom without consequences, closeness without commitment, control without responsibility. And when those terms stopped working in her favor, she lost control. I learned that setting boundaries is not being cruel, that respecting yourself is not punishing the other person, and that agreeing to stay friends does not mean continuing to act like a couple when you are no longer one. I do not know what will happen with Qley in the future. I do not know if what we experienced was the beginning of something or just a foothold in the middle of the chaos. But I know one thing for sure. Acting consistently, even when it bothers others, was the right decision. Sometimes taking someone at their word reveals much more than what they intended to show. I kept replaying this last idea on a loop, like a phrase that refuses to leave your head, because everything in this story revolved around that. Taking someone at their word and discovering what that person truly expected behind their words. After the police intervention, after the paperwork, the statements, the evidence, I thought the worst was behind us. In the moment, you feel almost a kind of release, as if your brain is saying, finally, it is done, it is handled, things will calm down. But the truth is, when someone loses control, they do not magically become rational again as soon as an authority figure appears. Qley and I were still shaken. There was this nervous exhaustion that leaves you drained, even if you have not run, even if you have not moved. We talked less, and when we did, it was in short, cautious sentences, as if every word could wake up a new storm. The restraining order had been issued for Qley, and it was a concrete, official protection. But the mind continues to jump at the slightest noise, at the slightest footstep in the hallway, at the slightest gust of wind against a window. She had been threatened, insulted, stalked, and now she had to act as if life was returning to normal. It is an impossible demand, and I saw it in her gestures, in her way of double-checking the locks, in her glances toward the door. For my part, I was thinking about myself too. About that chilling detail, the AirTag. The fact that someone you lived with, ate with, slept with, made plans with, one day decided to track you like you track a target. And suddenly, everything you thought you knew cracks. You wonder since when. You wonder if this had already happened before. You wonder if certain smiles were not masks. I also thought back to the group of friends, to that party, to their looks, to their silences, to what it basically means to be the last to know in your own story. The following days, messages started circulating in the group. Nothing direct, never. Always careful phrasing, vague sentences, as if people wanted to shield themselves from responsibility. I hope you are okay. It is a complicated situation. We do not want to take sides. Those words, seemingly neutral, sound different when you realize that some knew and still let the scene play out. I did not try to campaign. I did not write long messages to explain my version. I had no desire to enter an image war, because that is the trap. You go from an intimate story to a social trial where everyone judges based on impressions. And deep down, I knew the facts already spoke for themselves. Qley eventually showed the threats to a few people in the group, and then some changed their tune. They had this delayed, slightly ashamed reaction, like when you find out you are watching the wrong movie. We had no idea it was this bad. Haley never spoke to us like that. We are shocked. Yes, I was too. Except I had lived it from the inside. Meanwhile, Haley tried to make contact again, but not like before. It was no longer the voice of habit. Hey, can you drop this off for me? Or hey, can you handle this? It was something else, an alternation between playing the victim and aggressiveness. As if she was looking for the right key to open a door that refused to yield. She sent messages to mutual friends. She told her version with the angles that favored her. She said I had become cold, that I had humiliated her at the party, that I had purposely gotten close to Qley. And the most telling part is that she talked about all this as if the breakup had never disconnected her from me, as if I still had an obligation to behave according to her emotions, according to her rules. But it was over. And what drove her crazy was exactly that, the loss of control. One morning, I received a message from a friend in the group, someone I had always been quite close to. He asked if we could meet. I accepted. We met in a quiet place, a coffee shop where the music was loud enough to cover the awkward silences. He started by beating around the bush, then finally blurted out what was burning his tongue. Haley had told several people that she had suggested staying friends because she wanted the transition to be smooth, that she did not want drama, and that she still considered me someone important, and she did not understand why I had reacted like this. When I heard that, I almost wanted to smile, but it was a joyless smile because I saw the mechanism perfectly. For her, staying friends did not mean, we are changing our place in each other's lives. It meant, I keep the perks, I keep the access, I keep the comfort, but I remove the commitment. She wanted freedom, but without losing the service. And the day I applied the real rules of friendship, she felt the emptiness all at once. I explained this to my friend without anger, without making a scene. I told him simply, a friend does not have your keys. A friend does not ask you for favors as if it were your duty. A friend does not talk to you as if your time and space belong to them. And above all, a friend does not have the right to throw a jealous fit. He nodded. I could see he understood and felt a bit bad for swallowing certain versions without questioning. But I did not make him pay for it, because it was not the time to hand out social punishments. What I wanted was to turn the page cleanly. With Qley, the relationship became complicated, but not in a bad way. There was this closeness born in an extreme situation, this intensity that is unlike anything else. And at the same time, there was clarity. We both knew it had started in chaos. It was not a fairy tale, it was a refuge, a support, a hand reached out at the right time. We talked about it without lying to ourselves. She told me she did not want to be used to make Qley jealous. I told her I did not want to put her in danger, nor place her in the middle of a fight that was not hers. And we agreed on one point. No matter what happened between us, our priority had to be safety and stability. Qley started changing certain habits, schedules, routes, routines. She installed a camera at her entrance. She reinforced her door. She spoke to her workplace because she did not want Qley showing up there. And I did the same on my end. I checked my car, my belongings, my phone. When you find out someone tracked you, you never look at your world the same way again. Qley tried several times to bypass the boundaries. She could not legally approach Qley, but she tried to go through third parties, indirect messages. I am sorry, sent through someone else, which then smelled of an opening, an accusation, a threat, anger. This back and forth revealed everything. It was not healthy sadness, it was an obsession. At one point, I received a message directly from her, a longer message than the others. She said she never wanted it to go this far, that she had lost her mind, that she no longer recognized herself. Then she wrote a sentence that, paradoxically, confirmed everything I thought. She said I owed her at least one conversation out of respect, because 2 years cannot just be erased like that. And that is when I realized how much she did not understand, or rather, how much she understood but refused to accept. Because respect, I had given her for 2 years. I had given it in expenses, in commitment, in stability, in patience. But respect does not mean letting someone use you, control you, spy on you, intimidate you, and then still demand a place in your life. I did not reply, not out of contempt, but out of consistency. And that was exactly the lesson of this whole story. Consistency is what some people call coldness when it no longer suits them. Weeks passed, and little by little, the toxic energy began to subside. Not because Qley had become a different person, but because the legal and social framework prevented her from acting like before. When there are real consequences, some people calm down not out of realization, but out of fear of losing more. Qley was doing better. She was sleeping a little more. She was jumping less. She was laughing again, sometimes without it sounding forced. For my part, I had found an inner breathing room. That feeling that you can finally stand straight without wondering if you are hurting someone just by respecting yourself. And I caught myself thinking back to the beginning, to the version of Qley who talked about stability, about the long term, about building. I wondered if she really believed it, or if it was just an image she wanted to wear as long as it served her comfort. Because deep down, what she had shown was not a breakup. It was an attempt to keep a system. A system where she could leave without losing the benefits, where she could come back without asking, where she could impose her rules and emotions like a law. When I set boundaries, when I applied the simple logic of what she had asked for, she discovered reality. Freedom has a price, and that price is the loss of certain access. I did not win against her. It is not a competition. I just took back my place in my own life. And that, for some people, is unbearable. I cannot say what Qley and I will become. We continued to see each other, to talk, to support each other, but we also decided not to rush, not to confuse intensity with destiny. We did not want to lie to ourselves or build an illusion to fix another illusion. But I know that this story taught me something I will never forget. When someone offers you terms that favor them, do not let yourself be hypnotized by the sweetness of the words. Look at what those terms really imply. Look at what you lose and what the other keeps. Qley wanted friends, but she wanted friends who behaved like a couple. She wanted an open door, but without accountability. She wanted me to still be there, available, stable, ready to carry the burdens while she tested her freedom elsewhere. And the day I stopped being this convenient extension of her life, she exploded because it was not love she missed. It was control. Today, when I think back on all this, I do not tell myself, I should have done this or that to keep her. I tell myself, I should have set boundaries much earlier. Because boundaries do not destroy a healthy relationship. They only destroy relationships based on imbalance. And the truth is, her opening line, "Let's stay friends," was the most brutal eye-opener. It laid bare what she truly expected. And me, by taking her at her word, I saw exactly what she did not want me to see. Comment. I just wanted to share a quick thought with you all after that story. Setting healthy boundaries is one of the kindest things we can do for ourselves and the people around us. When we respect our own limits, we create space for real healing and genuine connections. I've come to realize that choosing peace over chaos isn't running away. It's taking responsibility for our own happiness. If you're watching this and feeling stuck in a similar spot, know that it's okay to put yourself first without feeling guilty. True strength shows up when we learn to say no with love and move forward with self-respect. Kindness starts with how we treat our own hearts, especially in difficult times. I hope this encourages you to reflect on the relationships in your life and make choices that bring you lasting calm. Let's keep supporting each other by living with more honesty and courage every day. You've got everything you need to build a better chapter ahead. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.